Hey, thanks everybody for getting together with us here on a Friday. I appreciate it. I've got a few of the brokers at our office here. Porter and I got a few people together on a Friday afternoon to walk through a quick lesson. Can we just start upper right, Chase, at you, then go to Chloe, then Ty? Can you just tell us who you are and what you do for a living?
Yeah,
Chase, go
Chase
ahead.
Nielsen. Yep, Chase Nielsen, investment sales, primarily focused in retail, Mountain States.
I'm Chloe Cypers. I do retail leasing in Salt Lake City, Utah, really all along the Wasatch Front in Utah. Tenant and landlord rep, about 50-50.
Tmiller, also at Legend Partners, do investment sales, focusing mostly on retail and medical office.
Great. Thanks for getting together. Time of year here, we're going into Thanksgiving week. And so it's kind of towards the end of the calendar year in 2024. One of the things I like to do is I go into the end of each calendar year to kind of look back through my existing portfolio and just kind of evaluate each piece of real estate that I'm attached to. I find that the majority of the net lease owners that I talk to, which isn't as much probably Chase and Ty as you two talk to, it's so uncommon for net lease owners to kind of go look back at their real estate. It seems like most of the time they acquire the real estate and they just kind of like set it on the shelf and they forget about it. Is that kind of is that what you typically see with most of your buyers, Chase?
Yeah, specifically with triple net. Yeah, I mean they get it for mailbox money, and they're probably out of state owners. And in a state like Utah, that can change just with the UDOT plan. So it's always good to keep track of everything.
So you're saying so you're just saying with the change of even the Department of Transportation, with how they might have changed something on the road that the property is located on, things can change.
Yeah, well, that's I think one of the things that you got to keep track of. But there's a lot of other factors also that could change. Maybe an anchor goes out or whatever happens with the site.
Ty, you started your career, we don't need to tell anybody who it was, but it wasn't NNN, it was a different firm like that.
Really good candy. Yeah, my kids really like it.
Perfect. So after spending a few years at that investment-only firm, what do you think is one of the biggest differences you've learned? Because you now sit amongst all leasing brokers, right? But you still are doing investment sales. What's kind of been one of the biggest differences you've noticed?
Sure. Starting at a big brokerage firm, you really are taught to sell anything and everything you get, which as a broker who's trying to make money, I get, and there's definitely merit to that. When you put a different hat on and take the perspective of ownership that a lot of your clients have, and hopefully a lot of the brokers strive to have, you understand there's much more to ownership than buying a hands-off net lease retail deal. A lot of times brokers sell a bill of goods that net lease investment is completely hands-off. They have 20 years, you're going to buy it, set it and forget it, and you'll collect this money. But ultimately, like any investment, there's risk involved. And being here amongst a lot of leasing brokers and having that perspective of ownership, I can now confidently talk to my clients about not only the risk involved, but the day-to-day management and, as you said, a minimum yearly management that is required to maintain these assets.
Porter, you've been in your primary role as an analyst with our group for a couple of years now. And so you think like an analyst, you think like an underwriting professional. What is one of the things that you would think you'd want to look at if you're looking at an annual health bill? And let's just say you own a portfolio and you have a Starbucks and a Taco Bell and a Jack in the Box. What would you want to be looking at annually from your perspective?
What would I be looking at annually? I mean, I'd probably look at the performance of each of those tenants. I mean, what's going to be important is if one of them ends up not doing so well and having to move out, I'd be looking at what the current rent is and trying to think, okay, is this something that can be covered? If not, maybe it's better to move on to something else. I'd just be looking at all the numbers, trying to see if it's something that I believe is stable long term.
Chloe, one of the biggest fears, if you're trying to accomplish what Porter just suggested, he's interested in current market rent, right? That's really what he is discussing there. How's the tenant performing, and then how does my rent compare to market? Often when I speak to net lease owners, when they are not aware of what their tenant might be paying and whether or not it's at or close or below or above market rate, a lot of the reason they give me is they're just afraid to reach out to a leasing broker. So since you're the leasing broker on the line and you look the most intimidating in this group for sure, what would you suggest? How do you encourage one of these owners to reach out to you?
Anyway, call, text, email. We, as on the listing side, when we're negotiating LOIs back and forth with tenants agents or tenants, we put a clause in requiring that they report their sales annually by the 15th of each month. That way, our landlords are getting an idea of what they're doing, and then they can chat with a leasing broker, us usually, and say, hey, how's this looking? Should we be concerned? Should we not be concerned? Have that conversation with us.
So it's an easy conversation. If I'm an owner of an investment property and I have somebody, Chloe in my market, whether it's in Salt Lake or maybe I'm in Minneapolis or Orlando or wherever else, I shouldn't feel apprehensive about reaching out to you.
No, it's a very normal conversation, and I can see why a landlord would be curious, if the tenant is struggling and you might need to consider putting it back out on the market. You want to know, about what time you should start marketing it. All that kind of stuff is timeline that we need to know of and can help you decrease the amount of time that your building sits vacant. So I think that's a totally normal conversation we have daily.
If I owned a Waffle House in Birmingham, Alabama, and that was a market you were an expert in, and I reached out to you and said, hey, look, Chloe, there's 5 years left on the lease. Here's the rent. Can you help me with the market value? Is that something that's going to cost me money typically? And that's the biggest thing right there is, there really should be no apprehension. So look, if you're listening to this and you're an owner of net lease property, we're going into the end of the year. If it's been a few years since you've looked at your property and you've gotten a health bill on how your tenant's performing, I would encourage you to get, one of these, Chase and Ty are great examples of investment brokers. They've got access to data, various platforms. They've got national sales data based upon how some of these restaurants perform. I'd encourage you to reach out to Chloe or the Chloe of that market that you're in, that's a local market expert, and find out how your building's doing. Occasionally, the trend shift in a good area today may not be a good area in 5 years. And the same can be true for any of these assets. Ty, Chase, Chloe, anything, Porter, anything you guys would like to add as we wrap up?
No, I think I would add, trying as brokers as we're trying to always sell ourselves. I think getting a broker you can trust starts with a conversation like Chloe had. Don't be afraid to reach out to a broker. And that starts with a conversation. But then get in the weeds with that broker. Ask him about market rates. Ask him about ownership. Ultimately, that's where we as brokers want to gain your trust, but ultimately earn our value of any fee that could be potentially made off any deal.
Yeah, fully agree with Ty. A full bill of health. It's when you go in and buy. Maybe you've 1031 exchanged into a triple net asset, and that was 5 years ago, and the bill of health was superb back then. And reach out to a broker and get their opinion on the sites today. And see, what's changed. Is everything the same? Have sales increased? Have more tenants gone in? Is there more traffic on the site? Is there less? What's happened to access to the site? Has there been competition that have entered the marketplace that you should be aware of? All those things, I think a competent broker will provide you in more.
Great. Chase, Ty, Chloe, Porter, thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and put your contact information right in the video here. If anybody's listening to this and you want to know how your tenant's doing and you don't know a broker to reach out to one of these brokers right here. Chase, Ty, and Chloe spend their day evaluating property for people, and they'd be happy to pick the phone up if you reach out to them and talk to them.